Well, thank you everyone for joining today's conversation. We are so glad to welcome each and every one of you this morning with Karen Mangia. She is a TEDx speaker. She is a best-selling author, a customer experience leader, and the Vice President of Customer and Market Insights at Salesforce. We are so excited to welcome Karen to today's program. Today, Karen will be talking to us about how to listen to the one source of your prosperity, profits, and productivity, your customers. And I'm Linda Fisk, the CEO of LeadHERship Global, and I am thrilled to welcome everyone to this program this morning. LeadHERship Global is one of the most impactful communities of extraordinary women in the world today. And we're so glad to welcome each and every one of you, extraordinary leaders, to the program today. At LeadHERship Global, we help unleash the full potential of high-performing and growth-oriented leaders in a confidential, supportive, and private community. LeadHERship Global helps members accelerate their success by defining their vision, growing their leadership, expanding their influence, and leaving a lasting legacy. If you're interested in learning more about this remarkable community of women leading across business, entertainment, and politics, then I would invite you to please reach out. You know, there is one voice that matters more than any other, and that is the voice of your customer. Your customers are the number one source of your organization's prosperity, profits, and productivity. Karen Mangia, Vice President of Customer and Market Insights at Salesforce, will explain this morning how to access the number one source of your company's growth, your customers. Today, you'll learn how to create a customer experience that's built on listening and designed for engagement. You'll hear how best-of-breed companies listen and respond to customer demands, creating a foundation of customer success, loyalty, and brand evolution. Karen will share powerful personal stories and unflinching corporate examples of companies that aren't afraid to push the envelope when it comes to customer loyalty, customer service, and customer success. The actionable insights that you'll hear today will help you better connect with your customers and gain an undeniable lead over your competition. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Karen. She is absolutely remarkable. To talk with us today about how to listen to the one source of your prosperity, profits, and productivity, you have a true expert in your midst, Karen Mangia. She is an internationally recognized thought leader whose TEDx experiences and appearances, keynotes, blogs, and books reach hundreds of thousands of business leaders every single year. She's the author of Working from Home, Making the New Normal Work for You, Listen Up, How to Tune into Your Customers and Turn Down the Noise, and also Success with Less. She is a prolific blogger, a sought-after media interview, and she's been featured in Forbes and regularly contributes to Thrive Global and ZDNet. As the Vice President of Customer and Market Insights at Salesforce, she engages in current and future customers all around the world to discover new ways of creating success and growth together. Prior to Salesforce, Karen spearheaded the customer satisfaction and experience at Cisco Systems. So I gotta tell you, we are so lucky to have Karen with us today to talk about how to win greater mind share and market share with a fresh look at customer service, customer success, and customer satisfaction. Please help me in welcoming Karen Mangia.
Thanks, everybody. It's great to be here. And, you know, I was thinking about that introduction, and it sounds like I must have had this remarkable sense of purpose from the beginning, right? About exactly what I was going to do and how I was going to get there. And I think the funny thing is ending up and having the opportunity to be in a career of listening to and connecting with customers had a little bit of a funny start that never makes the bio, which is why I want to share it. During university, I had a job working for a professor doing research, and he would send out a series of surveys to radio and television news directors. And my job was to call and follow up on the survey non-responders, to either conduct the survey over the phone or to offer to send them another survey. And when the responses would come back, I can picture sitting in his office with these pages and pages of papers, right, of these paper surveys, and standing at the whiteboard in his office and starting to chart out, what did we think the themes were, and what were people trying to tell us, and what was in these comments, and what was our hypothesis. And because of that, I developed this aspiration of wanting to do market research for a living. And at the time in the United States, the primary company where you would do that kind of work is called Nielsen Ratings. And so I thought, well, when I graduate university, this is it. I know exactly what I want to be when I grow up. The great irony is that I had failed to do my research and discover that they're headquartered in a state in the United States that most would not consider the most exciting place to live coming out of university. So I didn't go there. And like all of us, I had a dream deferred. So it took a little time in my career, winding my way through sales to end up in kind of my dream job. So if you're out there and you're thinking to yourself, gosh, I have a place I want to be and I haven't gotten there yet, that's okay. But I do kind of laugh that I hadn't done my research for a research career. So we all have these moments where we fail to do the homework we know how to do. And I'm so grateful to be here. It's great to meet all of you. And I'm also ecstatic to see the diversity of backgrounds and fantastic glasses and bold colors and bold people. So nice to meet all of you.
All right, Karen, thank you so much. Tell us a little bit about your journey. What's led you to have such passion around customer service, customer success, and customer satisfaction?
Well, what I really enjoyed just into my career in sales, I started to get very fascinated with customers' stories. I enjoyed asking the questions about, the challenge they were trying to solve or what they were trying to create next. And I got deeply invested in what we could create together. And something I found challenging about a sales role, even though I loved it and I'm grateful for the experience, is that I didn't always feel like I was in a position or in the role with the kind of scope to be able to really work with those customers in an expansive way, to create a vision that went maybe beyond the products and services that we could sell or for which, our team was carrying a quota. And I always kept customers and customer stories as a true North Star throughout my career, starting in project management and then sales and sales leadership. And I reached a point where I thought, is there a way to use this skill in a different context, and maybe have that opportunity to listen more deeply and solve more of the customer challenges that I was hearing outside of just the products and services we could bring to bear. And so I started doing some networking inside of my own company. I was at Cisco at the time. And I was fortunate in my networking journey to meet with an executive who said, I'm a big fan of rotational assignments. He was detailing that he had been in supply chain for a long time and had stepped out into a role in finance and then came back. But that learning was so invaluable. And so I asked him, in light of this interest and skill for connecting with customers and really bringing some innovation into the sales model, how could I put that to use somewhere else in the business? And what else might be possible? I wanted to add some new skills and learn about customers in a new way. And I was also fascinated with understanding how the feedback that we got from customers turned into kind of market sensing signals for new products that we would develop or new go-to-market strategies. I was fascinated to learn more about that. And so fortunately, he said, I've got a great idea. We're starting this partner experience team because, we were in kind of a distribution supply chain model. And he was like, we really need someone to take over this experience of listening deeply to our partners and understanding at a deeper level this value chain between our end user customers, our distributors and partners, and our company. And this is a build opportunity where your sales experience and your curiosity and love of questions and listening to feedback could be really useful. At the same time, you're going to learn a little bit about, operations and how do you build a new initiative and launch it to a company with 50,000 some odd employees and help that get traction. And you'll learn some adoption and change management. And so that was my start into the world of deep listening and creating and delivering experiences, and it expanded from there.
That's great. Karen, in your book, Listen Up, you note some of the statistics and stories behind the companies and organizations and even city governments that have created a customer-centric culture. So what stories and statistics were most surprising to you and why?
The first story that really caught me by surprise is the CEO of a company, and she is incredibly successful. She lived through a lot of really difficult personal life circumstances and found herself in a position wanting to provide a better life for herself and for her daughter. And she decided to start a company. She grew it, was very successful. And she shared this absolutely jaw-dropping story with me of a Friday afternoon. And we can all picture this moment, right? You're in your office or you're at your laptop and you're trying to finish up the last of your activities right before you transition into the weekend. And just as she's ready to power everything down, leave her office and commute home, she's picturing the relaxing happy hour and dinner. And she gets this email that stops her in her tracks. And it just says, "You're fired." And when she opened it up, it was an email from the CEO of their largest client that represented over 50% of their revenue. And he said, "Your service is terrible. Don't even bother showing up on Monday." And I mean, naturally, she was speechless, gasping. Of course, you're instantly responding to the message. You're calling the person, you're sending a text. The CEO would not speak to her. And what he did instead was start talking to other people in the geographic area that used her company and detailing, everything that went wrong. And so for her, it was an almost business ending event. I mean, if you have one customer comprising over 50% of your bookings and you potentially lose them in a single afternoon with no backup plan in mind, it's startling. And as she started to unwind it, I mean, her first tendency was to want to really get deeply upset with the account team or fire them, right? How could I have not known this was coming? And as the story played out, what she came to understand is that there were a number of little signs along the way that things weren't going well with that client. And in the role that she was in, she really depended on three things. One, information and insights from the team that directly interface with that client every day. The second is the long-standing relationship that she had with this CEO and company. And the third is the belief that if something were going that poorly, that CEO would pick up the phone and contact her directly. Well, what we so often find out is that our customers vote with their actions, sometimes in very bold ways when they feel like they're not being heard. And, she vowed to herself in that moment that she would never get that blindsided again. She was like, we didn't have the right system in place to not only listen to our customers, but to listen for the little signs along the way of discontent. And I kind of equate it to in our personal lives, if you were to go out to dinner with your spouse or significant other on your anniversary and you ask them the question, I mean, based on the last year, how likely are we to break up or stay together for the next year? You shouldn't be entirely surprised at that response, right? There's probably been little signs along the way over the course of the year that have been telling you about the health of that relationship. And for her, she was like, we didn't have those little day-to-day checkpoints in place to understand the difference between something that was inconvenient or dissatisfying versus something that was truly relationship altering. She did, by the way, the upside of the story is because of that event, she made a very deep commitment. Her company is called Alchemista, to investing in hearing the voice of the customer consistently and being able to take action in these small increments. And she has gone from that moment to her company having a 100% customer retention rate. And I mean, what would that mean for your business? And the difference for her was really putting a system in place for every member of the organization, including herself, to deeply listen and to respond, with the actions that make a difference.
I love that. That's so smart. Now, what are some of the lessons that every company can learn from some of those stories? I will tell you that one story that you shared gives me shivers to think that by losing one client, a company could lose more than 50% of their overall revenue. And with that one firing, the jeopardy of that company is at is the livelihood of that company is at risk. So what are some of the lessons that every company can learn from some of the stories that you shared? And what do you think are the most important 3 key learnings from some of the stories that you heard in Listen Up?
We all have blind spots. There are things that we all miss individually and organizationally. And so the organizations that are the most successful at winning with customers and retaining customers and growing customers do 3 things consistently. First, they take ego out of the conversation so that hard-hitting feedback can be heard. You know, when ego shows up, it gets in the way of what our customers are really trying to say. And great organizations and great leaders listen to the great feedback as well as the challenging feedback without needing to attach an ego to either side of that equation. So that's the first one. The second one is leading organizations ask different questions. So, you know, when you think about what happened, and I'll use several examples from conversations with the book and when I've lived as well. A lot of times, you know, we start to count on surveys, right? Or things like our win-loss rate as indications of what our customers want us to know. And there are a number of organizations that when you start to dive into the comments on some of those surveys, you find that your customers are surfacing both ideas and challenges that you're not directly asking them questions about. So even in those comments, you can find the topics that they're talking about, or same if you're listening to or reviewing your customer service call recordings. What are the themes that come up consistently with your customers as those little irritants or big relationship, you know, altering events that they're talking about that you don't ask about consistently for whatever reason? You know, circumstances shift. None of us, when the pandemic happened, had a perfectly tuned set of questions, right, to ask our customers. And in that moment, it's not just about the deep listening activity, it's about the questions you ask to open up the conversation and uncover some of those blind spots. The third one is that leading organizations think about how to take these big buckets of feedback, right? I mean, by the time you get all of this wonderful feedback from your customers, the list is overwhelming, right? You start to look at it and think, how can we do all these things? Or it becomes, I call it the 5-year, 5-phase, $5 million roadmap, right? You're like, this is impossible. So great organizations take that list and they think big and then act small. So they activate every member of the organization to participate in solving or at least making progress in very small steps toward those big themes. And they engage their employees in doing it. And I think a brilliant example of this is USAA, the insurance organization. And they were thinking about how to get some new innovation ideas, right? To be able to offer some new things to the customers and people that they serve, many of whom are active military veterans or former military. And so they looked in the direction of how to activate their employee base and submit ideas, you know, vote up ideas. And the person at USAA who has the highest number of patents, holds the most patents for innovation, is the security guard at the front guard shack on their physical campus at their headquarters. And, you know, if you were to say, let's put together a team of people that are going to solve our customer challenges, he might not have been the first person that would have come to your mind. And yet look what's possible when it was like, hey, submit a small idea we can do something with. It resulted in 25 patents.
Wow. That is so impressive. And also demonstrates the idea that great ideas can come from anywhere in the organization. It doesn't have to be top down. It can be bottom up. And I think listening is the key to understanding where those great ideas are surfacing, right? I love that.
Well, and he was seeing and hearing things, right, that others weren't seeing and hearing, right? I mean, people weren't telling him things, right, in the context of, you know, I hope he takes this and takes some action on it, right? I mean, they just saw a friend, someone who was a familiar face, and in sharing, you know, what they were experiencing and what they were hearing, that different point of view, right, is what opened him up to what was possible from seeing things in a totally different and new way.
Yeah, so smart. And you've noted that powerful new questions can offer a fresh perspective into any customer anywhere. And you mentioned that as one of your top 3 lessons learned, right? And they can empower your customer facing teams, including sales in the current market. So what are some of the powerful new questions that leaders on this call and across all leading companies should be asking?
The first one I call the big impact question, and it's particularly timely and relevant right now. And it showed up again in some research that I did with a coworker after the book came out. And we visited with chief customer officers and chief experience officers, right? People who listen for a living. And we asked them, what was in your portfolio pre-pandemic, now, and what do you anticipate will stick? And it was interesting, the parallel on this big impact question between the Listen Up book and research and the research we just completed. And the big impact question is this: who is your customer now? And the reason that question is so important is for so many organizations, the answer to that question has shifted. If you work in the hospitality space and, you've had Marriott as a client, well, they might not be your primary customer right now because their total addressable market has shifted substantially, right? For some organizations, if you are in a value chain kind of model, a number of organizations are pressing pause to switch between end user, customer, and distributor or partner, right? It's going both directions. The other piece too is for lots of organizations, this shift, this time of disruption has created an opportunity to add new types of customers, new customer segments or new buyers to your portfolio. And I'll use Salesforce as an example. As a result of the pandemic, we brought 2 new products to market that were not on the roadmap at all or in development before the pandemic started. Now they look in the direction of, how to help with crisis communication and vaccine distribution and contact tracing and keeping people safe. And what we discovered when we rolled these products out is that for the first time, really the primary buyer is chief HR officers and HR leaders. Well, that's not who we've sold to in the past. So a new product coming to market forced us to have to pause and say, wow, we have a new buyer who we don't know very well. And there are other people who are influencers of that decision. Wow, the most important thing we could do right now is pause and really get to know, this HR leader and what do they care about and what are they trying to solve for and what language do they speak in and how can we produce some thought leadership that compels them, to want to engage with us? How do we propagate the knowledge of that buyer throughout our entire organization so that everyone can get to know this new buyer? So there's a number of inflections of how that can play out, with a new buyer, with a totally new go-to-market segment, with a shift in who you're defining as your own customer. What I'm discovering is in organizations that either do not make the time or don't operate from the same understanding of who customers are, this is where you end up in a lot of contentious meetings and conversations about, what your priorities are or where budget's going to get allocated. And when you start to pull in that root cause, a lot of times it's because people don't have the same definition of who your customer is now.
Yeah. And I've seen that in almost every single organization I've been a part of, is this internal battle about who are our most important customers or what is that ideal customer profile that we're going after. So Karen, you've said that winning greater mind share and market share is largely dependent on a company's approach to customer service, customer success, customer satisfaction. So can you explain a little bit about how creating a customer-centric culture can help companies gain mind share and market share? Now, most of us on this call run businesses. We're part of LeadHERship Global. We've been in senior roles throughout our career, connected to advertising and marketing. So there's logic in connecting customer-centric culture with mind share and market share. But can you draw some really concrete lines between customer service, customer success, customer satisfaction, and mind share and market share?
I think it really comes down to a fundamental concept at this point, which is if you know who your customer is, do you have the same definition of what your customer connection or customer-centric strategy is? And I'll never forget the time when I got a bunch of leaders from a business together in a room because they were just certain that they were all on the same page, right? The customer experience leader, the customer support leader, the customer success leader, and a myriad of other people in customer-facing roles with professional services and so on and so forth. And by the time I corralled them into the meeting, I gave them, I started the meeting by saying, I know you don't want to be here. And so the beautiful thing about this is I will cancel this meeting and you can have all of the time back. You only have to do one thing. Here is a Post-it note and here is a pen. Just write on this small Post-it note, what is our customer experience strategy? You could also do it as what is our customer-centric strategy? And then I just need you to put it up on the whiteboard. And as soon as we can all see that we have consistent, clear alignment, the meeting will be canceled. You don't even have to tell your employees you're back at work and you could go get work done. Isn't that awesome? And they were like, yes. I mean, smiles break out across the room. As they write it down, people start putting on the whiteboard. No one, I don't have to talk anymore because they start the fights with each other. And the reality is, even in those customer-facing organizations, they didn't have the same definition or lens on the experience we were trying to deliver. And if the direct reports of the CEO in an organization don't know that, how could we possibly think that our employees, further down in the organization know the experience we're expecting them to deliver to our customers, and as an extension of that, have any semblance of how they would go about doing that, or if they're struggling, where they would go to get information. So having a clarity of definition about what matters, and I'll tell you a tool I've discovered to really break that down. But, when people don't have that common understanding, it's like we're expecting something of them that's almost unstated, and unstated expectations will always go unmet. And, kind of looking in that direction, something I've discovered that's very powerful to help bring organizations together and keep them connected and centered around the customer is outcomes. Outcomes are really the new experiences. And when you think about setting an outcome, defining an outcome you're expecting your team to deliver for customers, or you are designing an outcome with your customers that you could create and deliver, what you're saying is the ultimate outcome of this relationship looks this way. And along the way, we'll have some experiences to get there, but it's a powerful tool for aligning on expectations, for understanding and aligning on what matters, and also for being able to create together the plan to realize that outcome.
Yeah, brilliant, really eye-opening. Thank you so much, Karen. We do have a couple questions from the folks on the call, most of whom are LeadHERship Global members. So happy to welcome all of you to the call, but we do have a couple guests. And one of the questions that was noted in the chat deals with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and specifically, there was a question about how diversity, equity, and inclusion affects the idea of customer service, customer success. How do those two things link? What role does diversity and inclusion play in strategy and success?
We need more voices at the table. And what is fantastic about working from home is that there are always plenty of seats at the virtual conference room table. So what starts to happen if we get in a situation where we're starting to get a very ubiquitous view of an answer to a question like what's our customer strategy or how to solve a problem, that's always an indication to me that we don't have a diverse enough group at the table. So the more diverse the group of people at the table, the more diverse the set of use cases you're solving for, the more voices that participate, the more opportunities and paths to delivering outcomes and reinvention and innovation that you will discover.
And I tell you, I love the example you gave where you called a meeting with senior leaders at an organization, said, as soon as we have alignment about what that customer experience looks like, who we're serving and what we want that customer experience to be like, as soon as we have alignment, you get a whole day back. And they had to discover that for themselves that there wasn't alignment about who they were serving and how they were serving them and what that customer experience needed to be. And again, this idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion being part of that conversation is key to make sure that we really are serving the customer segments that we intend to in the way that they want to be engaged with, right? Which I think is brilliant. I want to first really sincerely thank everyone for carving an hour out of their day to be here with us. And I secondarily really want to honor and appreciate Karen Mangia, one of the most incredibly intelligent, insightful, wise women that I've come to know over the last year. It's no wonder she's a TEDx speaker, a best-selling author, as well as the customer experience leader at Salesforce. She offers incredible insight. And as a last comment, I would say most of you are already a part of LeadHERship Global, which I am so thrilled about. But if you're interested in learning more about this impactful community of extraordinary women leading in business, entertainment, and politics, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to tell you more about the community of leaders like Karen and others who are really innovating and disrupting their industries and bringing incredibly brilliant thought leadership to market. So thank you everyone for your time. I really appreciate it. And until next week, we say thank you. Thank you so much. Karen, such a pleasure. Thank you.
Great to be with you all. Have a great day.